Late January 1942, minus 20 degrees Celsius in the frozen ruins outside Moscow. The 334th Rifle Division's mortar platoon unloads 82mm mortars under German fire. Among them, a 22-year-old art student turned soldier named Ivan Sidorenko. Everything the Red Army taught him said mortars win battles through volume of fire, indirect bombardment, coordinated barrages. But while his unit slept, Sidorenko borrowed a scoped Mosin Nagant rifle and disappeared into the rubble alone. 4 kills in 1 week, 5 the next. Command noticed. German officers couldn't understand how Soviet snipers were igniting their fuel trucks and tractors from 600 meters away with single shots. No explosives, no artillery support, just one rifle, one incendiary bullet, one impossible trick that defied everything Wehrmacht doctrine said was survivable. The Germans deployed their own counter-sniper teams, elite marksmen with years of training, state-of-the-art optics, proven tactics. They hunted the self-taught art student who was somehow turning individual bullets into vehicle-destroying fires. But Ivan Sidorenko wasn't just killing Germans anymore. He was teaching others his secret. The frozen earth crunched beneath Ivan Sidorenko's boots as he helped his mortar crew position their 82mm tube in the ruins of what had once been a suburban Moscow factory. January 28, 1942, minus 23 degrees Celsius. The kind of cold that turned spit into ice before it hit the ground and made rifle bolts seize if you didn't keep them moving. Around him, the 334th Rifle Division's mortar platoon worked in practiced silence, unloading ammunition from horse-drawn sleds while German machine gun bursts echoed from positions barely 800 meters away. Sidorenko had been doing this for 3 months now. Load the shell, drop it down the tube, watch it arc invisibly through the gray winter sky toward coordinates, shouted by a forward observer he couldn't see. Wait for the distant thump of impact. Reload. The mathematics were simple. Their mortar could throw a 3.5-kilogram high explosive round roughly 3,000 meters. Fire 10 rounds in 2 minutes. Move before German counter-battery fire bracketed their position. Repeat until dead or victorious. But mathematics weren't winning this war. The Battle of Moscow had been raging since October. Hitler's Army Group Center had pushed to within 25 kilometers of the Kremlin before winter, and Soviet reinforcements finally stopped them. Now both armies were locked in a grinding stalemate among the frozen suburbs, trading salvos of artillery fire over bombed-out apartment buildings and shattered factories. The Red Army's doctrine was clear: concentrate firepower, overwhelm German positions with volume, advance when the barrage lifted. Yet after 3 months of this, Sidorenko's regiment had advanced exactly 4 kilometers. He had trained for this at Penza Art College until 1939, studying perspective and composition, learning how to see details that others missed. Then conscription came, and the Red Army taught him new lessons about angles and precision, how to calculate mortar trajectories, how to estimate distance by eye, how to spot the subtle differences in terrain that meant life or death. But even with all that training, he spent most days firing blindly at map coordinates, never knowing if his shells hit anything more substantial than frozen dirt. The absurdity struck him during a lull on February 3rd. His mortar crew was resting in the basement of a collapsed school, sharing a tin of preserved meat and weak tea, when Sergeant Petrov mentioned that a sniper from the neighboring regiment had killed 6 Germans the previous day. 6 confirmed kills, 6 fewer Wehrmacht soldiers to man machine gun nests and anti-tank guns. Sidorenko did the arithmetic in his head. His entire mortar platoon had fired 230 rounds that same day, consuming nearly 800 kilograms of high-explosive shells that had to be trucked forward through German artillery fire at enormous cost in fuel, vehicles, and lives. The result was impossible to measure because they never saw their targets fall. 1 rifle, 6 kills. Precision over volume. That night, while his squad slept in their blankets and the distant rumble of German truck engines carried across no man's land, Sidorenko made a decision that would change everything. He borrowed a scoped Mosin Nagant rifle from a wounded marksman in the medical station. The weapon felt familiar in his hands despite its 7-kilogram weight. heavier than his art supplies but balanced like a well-made easel. The PU telescopic sight mounted above the bolt was scratched, and the reticle had a slight cant to the left, but when he peered through it at a German helmet visible 600 meters away in the ruins of a bombed church, the magnification brought his target into sharp focus. He spent the next hour studying that helmet through the scope, learning the German soldiers' routine. The man emerged from cover every 12 minutes to scan the Soviet positions with binoculars, always from the same firing port in the church wall, always for exactly 30 seconds before ducking back inside. Predictable, vulnerable. Sidorenko calculated the range, estimated the wind drift, and squeezed the trigger during the soldier's fourth appearance. The 7.62mm bullet struck the German in the center of his chest. Sidorenko watched him crumple through the scope, then disappear as other Wehrmacht soldiers dragged the body away from the firing port. One shot, one kill, no wasted ammunition, no blind firing at map coordinates, just pure measurable effect. He returned the rifle before dawn and reported to his mortar position for another day of indirect fire. Missions. But that single shot had planted an idea that grew stronger with each passing day. While his mortar crew lobbed shells into empty grid squares, Sidorenko began studying the German positions through captured binoculars, mapping their routines, identifying their weaknesses. He noticed how Wehrmacht soldiers moved between positions at the same times each day, how they used the same routes through the ruins, how their machine gun crews rotated shifts every 4 hours with mechanical precision. By February 10th, he had convinced himself that one disciplined rifle could accomplish more than 10 mortars firing blindly. The next night, he borrowed the scoped Mosin Nagant again and took himself into the ruins between the lines. This time, he killed 2 Germans, a machine gunner who emerged from his bunker to urinate at exactly 2300 hours, and a Wehrmacht officer who made the mistake of using a flashlight to read a map in what he thought was a concealed position. The third night brought 3 more kills: a sniper moving between positions without proper camouflage, a radio operator who stood silhouetted against the glow of his equipment, a sentry who lit a cigarette on his watch. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, personal. Each kill was confirmed through the scope before Sidorenko moved to his next position. By the end of February, word had spread through the regiment that someone was hunting Germans in the ruins after dark. Soviet intelligence reported increased Wehrmacht security patrols and changes to their routine schedules, clear evidence that the enemy was responding to pressure they couldn't identify or counter. Sidorenko's mortar platoon commander, Senior Lieutenant Volkov, began asking questions about missing rifle ammunition and unauthorized movement during night hours. On March 2nd, Volkov confronted him directly. "Sidorenko, are you the one taking that rifle?" The lie would have been easy. Deny everything, return to his mortar duties, continue the war as the Red Army intended. But standing in the ruins of that Moscow suburb, with 15 confirmed kills behind him, and the knowledge that his precision was forcing German tactical changes, Ivan Sidorenko chose truth instead. "Yes, Comrade Lieutenant, I am." The silence that followed lasted exactly 7 seconds. Then Volkov smiled, the first genuine smile Sidorenko had seen since the battle began. "How many?" 15 confirmed, 3 more probable." Volkov nodded slowly, processing the implications. 15 dead Germans achieved by one soldier operating outside doctrine, using borrowed equipment during his off-duty hours. The mathematics were undeniable. "Report to regimental headquarters tomorrow morning. Colonel Mishchenko wants to meet the ghost who's been terrorizing Army Group Center." That meeting would end Ivan Sidorenko's career as an artillery soldier forever. But as he cleaned the borrowed rifle for the last time and prepared for sleep, he understood that his real war was just beginning. The idea had taken hold completely now. One rifle, one precise shot, could change everything. The only question was how far that principle could reach. Colonel Mishchenko studied the kill tally report with the focused attention of a man calculating artillery requirements. March 15, 1942. Spring was coming to the First Baltic Front, and with it, new tactical possibilities. 18 confirmed kills in 3 weeks, Comrade Sidorenko, using borrowed equipment, operating alone. He looked up from the paper. The 334th Rifle Division is being reassigned to forest operations near the Lavat River. Swamp terrain. Limited artillery support. I'm attaching you to the 1122nd Rifle Regiment as assistant commander of their sniper section. Sidorenko felt the weight of official recognition settle on his shoulders like a heavy pack. No more borrowed rifles, no more unauthorized night hunts. His precision shooting was now doctrine, not deviation. What are my orders, Comrade Colonel? Kill Germans, train others to kill Germans, make every bullet count. Mishchenko handed him a requisition form. You'll have proper equipment now. Mosin Nagant model 1891/30 sniper variant, PU telescopic sight, factory zeroed, and something special, armor-piercing incendiary ammunition, B-32 rounds. The B-32 cartridge was Soviet ammunition engineering at its most practical, standard 7.62 by 54 mm rifle round, but with a steel core wrapped in incendiary compound, designed to penetrate light armor and set fire to fuel, lubricants, anything flammable on the other side. Sidorenko had heard rumors about these rounds, but never seen one. What's the intended use, Comrade Colonel? German logistics, their fuel trucks, ammunition transports, communication vehicles. One precise shot can eliminate an entire supply convoy if you hit the right target. Mishchenko pulled out a tactical map showing dense forest crossed by narrow roads. Army Group North depends on mechanized transport through these forests. Every truck they lose forces them to use more trucks to deliver the same supplies. It's industrial arithmetic, make their logistics unsustainable. By April 10th, Sidorenko was dug into a camouflaged position 800 meters from a German supply route that wound between pine trees and swampy ground. His new rifle felt like an extension of his trained eye, perfectly balanced, scope crystal clear, trigger crisp as breaking glass. The B-32 rounds were heavier than standard ammunition, requiring slight adjustments to his range calculations, but the ballistic difference was negligible at distances under 600 meters. His first target was a Wehrmacht fuel truck moving slowly through mud ruts, standard German logistics vehicle, probably carrying 800 liters of gasoline for Panzer units operating deeper, in the forest. Sidorenko tracked it through his scope, leading the target slightly to account for its movement, then placed his crosshairs on the fuel tank mounted behind the cab. The B-32 round punched through the thin steel and exploded the gasoline in a fireball that consumed the entire vehicle. The driver and passenger died instantly. More importantly, 800 liters of irreplaceable fuel were destroyed, along with the truck itself. From an industrial perspective, that single shot had eliminated resources worth thousands of rubles and forced the Germans to reallocate vehicles from other operations to maintain their supply schedule. But the real breakthrough came 2 days later, when Sidorenko encountered something German doctrine said was impossible to destroy with rifle fire, a Panzer III tank. The tank was moving slowly through a forest clearing, probably conducting reconnaissance or escorting a supply convoy. Standard Soviet anti-tank doctrine required either a 76mm field gun or specialized anti-tank rifles weighing 15 kilograms and operated by two-man crews. Sidorenko had neither. What he had was one rifle, one B-32 round, and an idea that challenged everything both armies believed about armored warfare. Instead of aiming at the tank's thick frontal armor, he studied it through his scope for patterns. The Panzer III had external fuel tanks mounted on its rear hull, additional gasoline carried outside the main armor for extended operations. These auxiliary tanks were protected only by thin steel plates designed to stop small arms fire, not armor-piercing incendiary rounds. Sidorenko waited until the tank turned to navigate around a fallen tree, exposing its rear quarter to his position. Range, 420 meters, no wind, clear shot. He placed his crosshairs on the external fuel tank and squeezed the trigger. The B-32 round penetrated the auxiliary tank and ignited 150 liters of gasoline in an explosion that disabled the entire vehicle. The tank crew bailed out as flames spread to the engine compartment and ammunition storage. Within minutes, Secondary explosions from onboard shells reduced the Panzer III to burning scrap metal. One rifle shot had achieved what typically required a field gun and trained artillery crew. The tactical implications were staggering, but more importantly, Sidorenko understood that he had discovered something revolutionary. Precision targeting of vulnerability points could multiply individual firepower beyond all previous calculations. Word of the tank kill reached regimental headquarters within hours. By May 1st, Sidorenko was training his first class of sniper candidates, 12 soldiers selected for exceptional eyesight and steady nerves. The training was methodical, built around the principle that had guided his own development. One shot, one kill, maximum effect. Private Kirill was his best student, a former hunter from Siberia who understood patience and observation. During their first joint mission, Sidorenko taught him to study targets for minutes before shooting, mapping their routines, identifying their vulnerabilities. They positioned themselves in the thick forest overlooking a German communications post and waited. The lesson began at dawn. German radio operators maintained a strict schedule, equipment checks every 2 hours, antenna adjustments at precise intervals, message transmissions that followed Wehrmacht protocol exactly. Sidorenko had his student identify each pattern through binoculars, then calculate the optimal moment to strike. At 1100 hours, a German signals officer emerged to adjust a radio antenna that had been damaged by overnight wind. Standard maintenance procedure, probably taking 30 seconds. Kirill lined up his shot through the scope of his own Mosin Nagant, controlled his breathing, and fired. The officer dropped instantly. But more importantly, the communications equipment remained unmanned for 6 hours, while German units searched for the sniper who had eliminated their signals specialist. 6 hours of disrupted communications across an entire sector, achieved by one precisely placed bullet. That afternoon, Sidorenko and Kirill moved to a position overlooking a forest road used by German supply vehicles. Their target was a convoy of 3 trucks carrying ammunition to forward positions. Standard doctrine would have been to call for artillery support or organize an infantry ambush. Instead, Sidorenko demonstrated his incendiary technique. The lead truck was carrying wooden crates of artillery shells, high-explosive rounds for German mortars and field guns. Sidorenko aimed his B-32 round at the truck's fuel tank, knowing that the resulting fire would spread to the ammunition cargo. The explosion destroyed all 3 vehicles and eliminated enough German artillery rounds to supply a battery for 2 weeks. 2 soldiers, 2 rifles, 2 shots. Effect equivalent to a successful air raid or artillery barrage, but achieved without exposing dozens of men to enemy fire or consuming vast quantities of scarce ammunition. By June, Sidorenko's section had grown to 20 trained snipers operating across the First Baltic Front. Their combined tally reached 150 confirmed kills, including 12 vehicles destroyed with incendiary ammunition. More significantly, German logistics units had begun traveling only in heavily escorted convoys, using more fuel and manpower to move the same supplies through contested territory. The idea was spreading. Individual precision, properly applied, could disrupt entire enemy operations. One disciplined shooter with the right ammunition and tactical knowledge could achieve effects far beyond his individual firepower. The arithmetic was undeniable. 20 snipers were forcing the Germans to reallocate hundreds of soldiers to convoy security duty, disrupting their operational efficiency across an entire front. But as Sidorenko prepared his monthly training report for regimental headquarters, he had no idea that German Army Group North was already developing countermeasures. Wehrmacht intelligence had identified the sniper threat and was deploying its own specialists to neutralize it. The tactical revolution he had begun was about to face its first serious test. The first sign of organized German resistance came on July 14, 1943, when Private Kirill failed to return from a reconnaissance mission near Velikiye Luki. Sidorenko found his body the next morning, positioned in what should have been perfect camouflage among fallen logs and summer undergrowth. Single gunshot wound to the head, precision shooting from an estimated range of 300 meters. The killer had left no trace except excellent marksmanship and tactical discipline that matched Soviet sniper training. Wehrmacht intelligence had finally responded to 8 months of logistics disruption and personnel losses. German Army Group North was deploying dedicated counter-sniper teams, equipped with captured Soviet rifles, trained in forest concealment, and tasked specifically with hunting Sidorenko's section. The tactical revolution was facing its first serious challenge from an enemy that had learned to fight back using identical methods. Regimental headquarters confirmed the threat on July 20th with intelligence reports from captured German documents. Enemy sniper schools were operating behind German lines, training marksmen specifically for anti-sniper operations in Baltic forest terrain. Wehrmacht doctrine now included detailed procedures for locating and eliminating Soviet sniper positions, complete with specialized equipment and small unit tactics designed to neutralize individual shooters. But Sidorenko's kill tally was accelerating even as the danger increased. His personal count reached 200 confirmed kills by August 15th, including 17 vehicles destroyed with B-32 incendiary rounds. More significantly, the sniper training program he had established was producing results that exceeded every projection. 47 trained marksmen were operating across the First Baltic Front, achieving an average of 8 kills per month per sniper. The industrial arithmetic was staggering. Less than 50 men were inflicting casualties and logistics disruption equivalent to an entire rifle regiment. The breakthrough that would define his legacy came during the third week of August, when German forces attempted to establish a new supply depot in a captured Soviet village. Wehrmacht logistics units moved 3 ammunition trucks, 2 fuel transporters, and a communications vehicle into defensive positions around what had once been the village school. Standard German procedure called for dispersed parking to minimize damage from Soviet artillery, but the terrain forced them to cluster their vehicles in the school courtyard. Sidorenko studied the depot through binoculars from a concealed position 900 meters away, 6 high-value targets positioned within a 50-meter radius. Traditional Soviet doctrine would have called for artillery bombardment or an infantry assault, both requiring significant resources and accepting substantial casualties. But Sidorenko saw something different, an opportunity to demonstrate that precision could achieve what massive firepower could not. The fuel transporter was parked directly adjacent to the ammunition truck, carrying artillery shells for German mortar units. If he could ignite the fuel vehicle with a B-32 round, the resulting fire would spread to the ammunition cargo and create a chain reaction that would destroy the entire depot. One shot, properly placed, could eliminate resources worth thousands of marks and disrupt German operations across the entire sector. The tactical challenge was extraordinary. Range: 870 meters. Variable wind through dense forest. Target partially concealed by other vehicles. Margin for error: 0. Miss the fuel tank by even 10 centimeters, and the B-32 round would punch harmlessly through steel plating without igniting anything. But if the shot was precise, the effect would demonstrate conclusively that individual marksmanship could achieve strategic results. Sidorenko spent 4 hours in position, studying wind patterns, mapping the target area, calculating the exact point of impact required to penetrate the fuel tank at the optimal angle. At 1500 hours, when German soldiers were changing guard shifts and temporarily distracted, he took the shot. The B-32 round struck the fuel transporter exactly where he had aimed, penetrating the tank and igniting 800 liters of gasoline in an explosion that spread immediately to the adjacent ammunition truck. Secondary explosions from German artillery shells created a fireball that consumed all 6 vehicles and killed 11 Wehrmacht soldiers. The chain reaction continued for 20 minutes as ammunition cooked off and fuel fires spread to wooden buildings throughout the village. From 900 meters away, using 1 rifle and 1 specially designed bullet, Sidorenko had eliminated an entire German supply depot. The tactical implications transcended anything either army had imagined possible, from individual small arms fire. This was precision warfare reduced to its purest form, maximum effect achieved through perfect targeting rather than overwhelming volume. But the success came at a cost that became clear within hours. German radio intercepts, analyzed by Soviet intelligence, revealed that Wehrmacht commanders had identified the depot destruction as sniper action and were deploying an entire platoon of counter-sniper specialists to locate and eliminate the responsible marksman. Army Group North was treating Sidorenko's section as a strategic threat requiring dedicated military resources to neutralize. The hunter had become the hunted, and German expertise in forest warfare was formidable. Wehrmacht snipers had been operating in similar terrain since the invasion began, developing camouflage techniques and small unit tactics specifically adapted to Baltic forest conditions. They understood concealment, patient observation, and precision shooting. Most dangerously, they were learning Soviet methods by studying the evidence Sidorenko's section left behind. September brought a deadly game of tactical evolution as both sides adapted their methods. German supply convoys began using different routes daily, varying their schedules, posting additional security. Wehrmacht snipers established overwatch positions covering known Soviet approaches to German logistics routes. Counter-sniper patrols moved through contested forest areas, searching for evidence of Soviet sniper activity. Sidorenko responded by expanding his training program and refining his techniques. By October 1st, he was personally instructing 62 sniper candidates while maintaining his own operational schedule. The training curriculum now included counter-counter sniper tactics, how to identify German sniper positions, how to avoid established patterns that enemy observers could predict, how to eliminate opposing marksmen before they could report Soviet positions. His personal kill count reached 320 by November, but the numbers told only part of the story. More important was the multiplier effect of his training program. Soviet intelligence estimated that snipers trained by Sidorenko's methods were responsible for over 800 German casualties since spring, plus 37 vehicles destroyed and countless logistics disruptions that were impossible to quantify precisely. The industrial arithmetic had reached a tipping point. Fewer than 100 Soviet soldiers were forcing German Army Group North to allocate thousands of men to convoy security, counter-sniper operations, and route changes that consumed additional fuel and time. The tactical concept that had begun with one borrowed rifle and unauthorized night missions was now reshaping how both armies approached forest warfare across hundreds of kilometers of front. But on December 3rd, 1943, the tactical revolution faced its greatest test when German counter-sniper teams finally located Sidorenko's primary training facility. Wehrmacht intelligence had spent months analyzing Soviet sniper activity patterns, identifying the concentration of trained marksmen operating from forested positions west of the Lovat River. A company-strength German assault force was moving to eliminate what they correctly identified as the source of their sniper problem. The attack would come at dawn on December 7th. Sidorenko had less than 4 days to relocate his entire operation or stand and fight against overwhelming odds. Either choice would determine whether his precision warfare concept survived long enough to change the war. The evacuation of the sniper training facility began before dawn on December 4th, 1943. Sidorenko moved through the forest positions where he had taught precision shooting to 87 Soviet marksmen, collecting equipment and destroying evidence that might help German counter-sniper teams understand his methods. Every spent cartridge case, every range card, every training target had to be eliminated or relocated. Wehrmacht intelligence was skilled at reconstructing enemy capabilities from battlefield debris. Sergeant Petrov coordinated the logistics with the efficiency that had kept Sidorenko's snipers supplied with B-32 incendiary rounds throughout the autumn campaign. 63 trained snipers relocated to new positions across 4 sectors, Comrade Major. Training equipment packed for transport to the reserve position near Pskov. All records of sniper techniques transferred to division headquarters. The promotion to Major had come through on November 20th. Recognition of the strategic impact his methods were having on German operations throughout Army Group North's rear areas. But evacuation meant abandoning the systematic approach that had made his training program so effective. Instead of concentrating his best instructors in one location where they could refine techniques and share tactical innovations, Sidorenko's snipers would be scattered across hundreds of kilometers of front. Each marksman would operate independently, applying the precision shooting principles they had learned but unable to contribute to the collective development of new methods. The tactical revolution was fragmenting just as it was achieving maximum effect. German pressure intensified throughout December as Wehrmacht counter-sniper units adapted their techniques to match Soviet innovations. Enemy marksmen were using captured Mosin-Nagant rifles with Soviet optics, making it impossible to distinguish German positions from Soviet sniper nests through visual observation. German ammunition included their own incendiary rounds designed to ignite fuel and ammunition, just like the B-32 cartridges that had made Sidorenko's logistics attacks so devastating. By January 15, 1944, Sidorenko's personal kill count had reached 397 confirmed eliminations. His snipers were reporting successful engagements across the entire First Baltic Front. Fuel trucks destroyed, ammunition convoys ambushed, communication lines severed by precision shooting. But German countermeasures were claiming Soviet lives with increasing frequency. 12 of his trained marksmen had been killed by enemy sniper fire since November, including 2 of his most experienced instructors. The war was consuming his students faster than he could train replacements. February brought the tactical challenge that would define the effectiveness of everything Sidorenko had developed. German intelligence identified a critical ammunition depot near the Estonian border where Wehrmacht units were stockpiling artillery shells for a planned spring offensive. The depot contained enough high-explosive rounds to supply 6 artillery batteries for 2 months of intensive operations. Soviet artillery could not reach the position, and a conventional infantry assault would require an entire regiment with enormous casualties. But precision targeting offered an alternative approach that exemplified everything Sidorenko had been teaching about maximum effect through minimal resources. The depot was defended by 2 companies of German infantry with machine gun positions covering all approaches. Standard Wehrmacht security included roving patrols, searchlight coverage, and anti-aircraft weapons to prevent Soviet air attacks. However, the ammunition storage area was concentrated in 3 large wooden warehouses positioned within 50 meters of each other. If one building could be set ablaze using incendiary ammunition, the fire would spread to adjacent structures and potentially detonate the entire stockpile. Sidorenko studied the target through binoculars from a concealed position 1,200 meters away. The range exceeded the effective accuracy of his Mosin-Nagant rifle, but the tactical opportunity was too significant to ignore. German ammunition shortages were already affecting their artillery support for infantry operations. Destroying this depot would cripple Wehrmacht offensive capabilities across the entire Estonian sector. The shot required perfect conditions and flawless execution. Wind speed below 5 kilometers per hour. Clear visibility, precise range calculation adjusted for the extreme distance. Target identification accurate enough to hit a specific point on a warehouse wall, where B-32 incendiary rounds would have maximum effect on the wooden structure and stored ammunition inside. At 14:30 hours on February 21st, atmospheric conditions aligned perfectly with tactical requirements. No wind, temperature steady at -8 degrees Celsius, German sentries following predictable patrol patterns that provided a 40-second window of minimal observation coverage. Sidorenko loaded a B-32 round and adjusted his scope for the 1,200-meter range. Through the optics, the target warehouse appeared as a brown rectangular shape against white snow, barely larger than the reticle crosshairs. He controlled his breathing, compensated for the bullet drop over such an extreme distance, and squeezed the trigger with the precision that had become his signature throughout 2 years of warfare. The incendiary round struck the warehouse wall exactly where he had aimed, penetrating the wooden structure and igniting stored artillery propellant inside. The initial fire spread rapidly through the building as German soldiers ran toward the flames, unaware that they were approaching thousands of high-explosive rounds heated to ignition temperature. The first secondary explosion came 18 minutes later when artillery shells began detonating from heat exposure. The blast destroyed the entire warehouse and spread fire to the adjacent buildings where more ammunition was stored. Chain reactions continued for over an hour as German artillery rounds, mortar shells, and rifle ammunition cooked off in a series of explosions that eliminated the entire depot. From 1,200 meters away, using 1 rifle and 1 specialized bullet, Sidorenko had achieved what would have required a successful bombing raid or artillery bombardment involving hundreds of men and massive resource expenditure. The precision warfare concept had reached its logical conclusion: individual tactical excellence producing strategic results through perfect application of available technology. German radio intercepts confirmed the depot's complete destruction within hours. Wehrmacht units across the Estonian sector reported critical ammunition shortages that forced them to cancel planned offensive operations and reduce artillery support for defensive positions. Army Group North was compelled to reallocate scarce transport resources to rush replacement ammunition from distant supply bases, disrupting logistics schedules throughout the entire theater of operations. But the success came with consequences that became apparent on April 12th, when German mortar fire bracketed Sidorenko's position during a routine observation mission. Shrapnel from the first round tore through his left shoulder and upper chest, inflicting wounds that required immediate evacuation to a field hospital. The injury would end his frontline service permanently, but not before his personal kill tally reached 437 confirmed eliminations. More significantly, the training program he had established continued expanding even as he recovered from his wounds. Soviet sniper schools throughout the Red Army were adopting his methods, teaching precision shooting techniques to thousands of marksmen who would carry his tactical innovations to every front of the war. The concept that had begun with borrowed equipment and unauthorized missions had become official doctrine, multiplying its effect far beyond what any individual soldier could achieve through personal action. By war's end in May 1945, conservative estimates credited Sidorenko's trained snipers with over 3,000 German casualties and hundreds of vehicles destroyed through precision incendiary attacks. The arithmetic was undeniable. His tactical revolution had achieved effects equivalent to an entire division while consuming resources appropriate for a single company. Individual excellence, properly applied and systematically taught, had changed how wars could be fought. The telegram arrived at the field hospital on June 4, 1944, while Sidorenko was still learning to use his left arm after 2 months of a recovery from shrapnel wounds. By decree of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, Major Ivan Mikhailovich Sidorenko is awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union for exceptional courage and military skill in battles against the German fascist invaders. The highest military honor in the Red Army, recognizing not just his personal kill tally of 500 confirmed eliminations, but the strategic impact of the precision warfare doctrine he had created. He would never return to frontline combat. The shoulder injury had healed improperly, leaving him unable to hold a rifle steady enough for the extreme precision his methods required. But from his hospital bed, Sidorenko could see the training ranges where Soviet sniper instructors were teaching his techniques to hundreds of marksmen bound for every front of the war. The idea that had begun with borrowed equipment and unauthorized night missions was becoming the standard method for eliminating high-value German targets across thousands of kilometers of combat zones. By August, he was directing the expanded sniper training program from a headquarters position in Leningrad, overseeing the instruction of over 2,000 marksmen who would carry his precision shooting methods to the advancing Red Army. The curriculum had evolved far beyond individual marksmanship to encompass industrial targeting doctrine. How to identify German logistics vulnerabilities, how to calculate the strategic impact of destroying specific vehicles or facilities, how to maximize tactical effect through minimal resource expenditure. The reports arriving from trained snipers validated everything Sidorenko had theorized about precision warfare. Soviet marksmen operating with German Army Group Center were achieving an average of 12 confirmed kills per month while consuming only standard rifle ammunition plus occasional B-32 incendiary rounds. German logistics units were requiring additional security escorts that diverted thousands of Wehrmacht soldiers from combat duties to convoy protection roles. Wehrmacht ammunition convoys were traveling longer routes to avoid known Soviet sniper positions, consuming extra fuel and time that disrupted delivery schedules across entire army sectors. The arithmetic of individual excellence multiplied through systematic training was reshaping how both armies approached warfare. Less than 3,000 Soviet snipers were forcing German commanders to allocate tens of thousands of soldiers to counter sniper operations, logistics security, and route modifications. The tactical revolution had achieved strategic significance through pure efficiency, maximum enemy disruption produced by minimum friendly resource investment. But the true measure of Sidorenko's legacy became apparent in October when Soviet forces launched their offensive to clear German troops from the Baltic states. Red Army units advancing through Estonia and Latvia encountered Wehrmacht positions that had been systematically degraded by months of precision sniper attacks on their supply lines, communication networks, and personnel. German artillery support was limited by ammunition shortages caused by destroyed supply convoys. Wehrmacht radio communications were disrupted by the elimination of signals personnel. German morale was compromised by the constant threat of invisible marksmen who could eliminate individual soldiers from ranges exceeding 600 meters. The offensive succeeded with casualties significantly lower than Soviet planners had projected, largely because German defensive capabilities had been weakened through systematic application of precision targeting techniques that Sidorenko had developed during 2 years of tactical experimentation. His concept of achieving maximum effect through individual excellence had contributed to victory on a scale far beyond what any single soldier could accomplish through personal combat action alone. Victory in Europe came on May 8, 1945. Final tallies credited Sidorenko personally with 500 confirmed kills and the training of over 2,500 snipers who had achieved collective results that defied traditional calculations of individual combat effectiveness. Conservative estimates suggested that his precision warfare methods had eliminated more than 15,000 German soldiers while destroying hundreds of vehicles and facilities critical to Wehrmacht operations across multiple fronts. The strategic impact transcended simple casualty figures. German commanders had been forced to modify their logistics, communications, and personnel deployment patterns to counter Soviet sniper threats, consuming resources and limiting tactical flexibility throughout the final 2 years of the war. Army Group North alone had allocated an estimated 10,000 soldiers to anti-sniper operations that might otherwise have been used for offensive missions or defensive reinforcement. Post-war analysis by both Soviet and captured German military planners concluded that precision targeting methods pioneered by individual marksmen like Sidorenko had achieved effects equivalent to entire artillery regiments while consuming resources appropriate for small infantry units. The concept of individual excellence properly applied and systematically multiplied through training had proven capable of producing strategic results that traditional military doctrine had considered impossible for small arms operations. In 1946, Sidorenko retired from active military service and returned to civilian life as a foreman in a coal mine in Chelyabinsk Oblast. The transition from strategic warfare to industrial management reflected the same attention to precision and efficiency that had defined his military career. He applied the same principles of individual excellence and systematic training to coal extraction that he had used to develop sniper doctrine, achieving production, improvements that earned recognition from regional industrial authorities. But the letters continued arriving from former students throughout the 1950s and 60s. Soviet snipers who had learned his methods wrote to describe how precision shooting techniques were being adapted for peacetime applications. Hunting, competitive shooting, industrial safety training that required extreme accuracy under pressure. The tactical innovations that had changed warfare were finding new applications in civilian contexts where precision and individual excellence remained valuable skills. A letter from a former trainee in 1963 captured the lasting significance of what Sidorenko had achieved. Comrade Major, your words saved my life in '44 when I lay in snow outside Riga, waiting for the perfect shot at a German machine gun position. I never forgot what you taught about the first shot being the only shot that matters. That lesson has guided everything I have done since the war, in my work, in my family, in teaching my own sons to hunt. You showed us that one person, properly prepared and completely disciplined, can change the outcome of any situation. The principle had transcended its military origins to become a philosophy of individual responsibility and excellence. Precision over volume, quality over quantity. Individual discipline multiplied through systematic training to achieve effects far beyond what traditional methods considered possible. When Sidorenko died on February 19, 1994, in Dagestan, the obituaries focused on his wartime achievements and Hero of the Soviet Union decoration. But his real legacy was conceptual, the demonstration that individual tactical innovation, properly developed and systematically transmitted through training, could produce strategic effects that changed how conflicts were fought and won. In a war measured in millions of casualties and billions of rounds fired, one rifleman's commitment to making every shot count had created tactical doctrine that outlasted the conflict itself. The idea had become immortal, passed from teacher to student across generations of marksmen who understood that precision, properly applied, could change everything.